Stanio Clanio, what is going on? Welcome into Team Stanio Live, where we are talking everything real estate, news, and living in Cincinnati, Ohio. Hope you're having a wonderful Sunday afternoon, evening now. Thanks for jumping in. As always, would love to hear in the chat where you guys are watching from. Type that in, and any questions you have tonight, we will be sure to get to those. I'm excited about tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about some Cincinnati economic development and what's going on in the city. So maybe a little bit less real estate focused, but in the end, doesn't everything economically always come back to doesn't it come back to real estate? So we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about an arena in Cincinnati. Came across a very interesting interview with Jeff Berding this week, and I want to share some of that with you and some of my thoughts. We're going to update you on the railway situation because that vote is coming up really quick in terms of the sale of the Southern Railway. Some pretty big news coming out of the University of Cincinnati, so I want to hit that, make sure you guys see that. And then there's another article just on the overall state of Cincinnati's economy from a large local banker that I think is interesting as well. So as always, let us know where you're watching from. Welcome in. I hope you're having a good week. One of my favorite things about living here in Cincinnati and the Midwest in general, I'm from Michigan originally, is the fall colors. And we are right in the middle of it right now. The trees are alive. You've got these beautiful greens and yellows and auburns and reds and purples, and it's awesome. So driving around town, I don't know about you guys this week, but I get really filled up and really excited about that. And I know a lot of people watching the channel, they're not from here, or they're not from a climate that gets the 4 seasons. And it's one thing, I've talked about, I did a video on the best months of weather in Cincinnati. I think I named September as my favorite. I also really like May. But October is really wonderful because you're starting to get that first cooler weather, and the leaves are changing and the leaves are crackling on the ground. It's pretty special. It's pretty magical. But today was one of those days. Had a great time with our church this morning, and the fall colors were awesome. And then took the kids up to Kings Island and rode a few rides this afternoon. I think everybody who's normally watching the Bengals game was there today because Cincinnati's on a bye, and so Kings Island was a little bit crowded for their Halloween, but they do it up right. They from like the morning until 6 p.m. It's great for the kids. There's pumpkins and, scary things, but it's not that scary yet because it's not dark. They've got trick-or-treating for the kids. So we had a blast doing that. We boogied out of there before it was dark and before the kids totally broke down and to come do this tonight. What's up, SoCal? Rick, good to see you. Welcome in. And, but yeah, October's awesome. Hey, those of you guys watching, be sure to like it below. We are getting really close to 5,000 subs on this channel, which is just incredible. We've been doing this channel for a few years now, helping a lot of people get to know about the Cincinnati area, helping a lot of people buy and sell houses, which is great. And we're going to keep it rolling. Got some exciting things coming on the channel. We're trying to grow the team here, and we just want to keep bringing great content that's helpful. I love it. It's so honoring. It's so humbling when I talk to you guys and you're like, hey, was thinking about Cincinnati, came across your videos. And yeah, now we're coming to Cincinnati. We're going to move here. Would you help us out? And we love to do that. So getting close to 5,000 subs, that's super exciting. Really close. One other fun thing this weekend before we jump into the news this week is what's going on? Good evening. Good to see you. I'm going to butcher the name. Anik? I don't know, but glad to have you on here. Alex had family in town, and I took them to the coffee festival at Music Hall and then Finley Market. They love the area. That's awesome, Alex. Glad to hear it. Alex, I think you're going to be excited about tonight, the content of tonight, talking about an arena, the railway, some things going on around downtown and economic development. So glad your family had a great time. Finley Market is a great place to bring family members. It's I believe, the second oldest outdoor market in the United States, which is a very cool fun fact. And it's a great place to go. I'm sure it was a perfect day for it. It was a clear, sunny, mid 50s day here in Cincinnati. It was just awesome. This weekend, one other thing before we jump into the news here was my wife's. So I'm going to age myself here. Okay. I know some of you guys watching this are younger than me. Some of you are older than me. And my wife's 20th high school reunion was this weekend. So now I'm older than my wife. So my 20th reunion was 4 years ago. I'm 4 years older than my wife. But she was class president at Scott High School. And so she had to do all the planning, got it together. We were down in Covington at Molly Malone's, had a great turnout. And I don't know if any of you guys, I'd love to hear some of your, your high school reunion stories, if you've gone to them or not. A lot of people, the last few years, if they had them with COVID, they were kind of knocked out. And so mine was in 2019 because I graduated in 1999 from high school, and we got it in right before COVID hit. But I heard that in the last few years, some classes have doubled up and done them together if they were canceled in the middle. But one thing I love about the 20th reunion, now that we've both experienced this, is it's just very chill and relaxing. And like when you see people, you're just kind of happy to see it. You're just like, man, life is hard. We didn't think life would be this hard 20 years ago. And hey, you're like alive. You're doing it, man. You're parenting. You got kids and you're doing the thing, and got a few extra pounds on you, but that's all right. And but you're alive. You made it. Good job. And whereas like at the 5 and 10 year reunion, I feel like you're kind of looking around and you're like sizing people up still, and there's still a little bit of that cliquishness, that carries over from high school. At 20, you're just kind of like, way to go, man. Like good to see you. Way to go. Glad you made it. So that we had a lot of fun with that last night. That was a great time. Let's see here. A few other comments. Alex, that's why I'm here. Bring the stadium to Duke Convention Center, although my bet is on the West End. Yeah, I think based on what we're probably going to talk about tonight, those are some of my thoughts too. But yeah, we're going to get into that. Amber, what's going on? I'm not sure if you remember a couple of weeks ago, I told you I was moving from Albania. I do remember. It's pretty hard to forget. I've been here 5 days now. That's awesome. Found a short-term rental in Westchester for now, but would love to live downtown. Fantastic. Well, hey, come, let's meet. I'm in my offices in Columbia, Tusculum. We should get together. And even if you're just looking for a rental, would love to help you find that downtown. I'm sure Alice can jump in and speak to what it's like living down there, but so glad you're here. Welcome. That's amazing. Welcome to Cincinnati. Hope it's treating you well so far. All right, let me pop over to what we're going to talk about tonight. What I want to introduce you guys to first, if you don't know who this is Jeff Berding. And he is a former Cincinnati City Council member. He was on City Council 3 times. And currently, he is the co-chief executive officer of FC Cincinnati, alongside with Carl Lindner Jr., I believe. And he's 56 years old. One of the things I find about Jeff Berding, I've been super impressed with this guy for a long time, is because when he puts his mind and his heart and his hand to something, it seems to get done in the city. And so I just wanted to introduce you to him before we jump into the article here on what's going on specifically around this topic about the arena. And real quick here, Annika is building with Fisher Homes in Crescent Springs and not opting to build the deck patio through them. Any recommendations for third-party contractors, Lowe's or Home Depot? Yeah, you could go that route. What you can also do is ask Fisher Homes, your sales rep, because oftentimes the people who do their decks, you might be able to hire them just outside of the Fisher Homes process. So see if they'll give you that contact info, because they do them on those Fisher Homes all the time. If not, yeah, Lowe's or Home Depot can be fine. It might not be the most affordable route to go with them, but they're going to do a good job, and the customer service is usually pretty good there. So hopefully that helps you, but maybe just ask whoever your sales counselor is with Fisher Homes, and they might be able to hook you up with that contractor. If not, you can email me and I'll help you out and give you some other names too. Okay. So we're talking about the arena tonight, and just to give you guys an idea, if you're not from around here, where this is in Cincinnati. So right down here in the Banks, you've got the skyline of downtown right out here on 2nd, 3rd Street. You've got Great American Ballpark, and just east of Great American Ballpark is this Heritage Bank Center. Okay. And it's not great. Okay. It's kind of landlocked, and it's outdated. And, one of the great things we have going about Cincinnati is that, it's a beautiful city right there on the river. The skyline's gorgeous with all the hills. We got some great topography. One of the challenges we have is with the river and with, these hills right behind it going up into Clifton. It's very tight. There's not a lot of real estate down here. And so, the streets are a little bit harder to navigate because of the hills. And with this arena, God love the people who have, Heritage Bank now. I know it's been US Bank Arena. It's been different things throughout the years, but it's just not in really good shape. It's outdated. And we're not able to bring in a draw of these massive, these larger conferences or venues or concerts that we want to bring, because the arena is not in great shape. So we're trying to figure out what to do with it. Now there is a little bit of, let me bring you over here to this article. Jeff Berding, who I just introduced you to, says, hey, it's time to roll up our sleeves with this. And there is getting to be some movement on this, and even some renderings of like, hey, what if we put this over on the west end? And so Alex said earlier that my bet is on the west end where this is going to go. Yeah, there's a lot of movement. So going back here, there's a lot of movement on the west end, kind of right over here. So here, right up from downtown, you've got Washington Park, and then you've got TQL Stadium. And so what we've talked about in a few previous episodes, and in this interview, if you guys want to listen to the whole thing from That's So Cincinnati, there's a lot of development. There's about, I want to say it's a $300 million development going in around TQL Stadium. And so they're basically kind of trying to make a mini Banks up here on the west end. So you got Finley Market right here where Alex was talking about. You've got the streetcar that's going to go up to Finley Market and Ryan Geist right up here, and also goes all the way down to the Banks, down by Ray Street and Washington Park. So where do you have a little bit of room? You have a little bit of room over here. The other thing that's happening is this convention center, which is right here, on kind of the west side of downtown, is getting a total makeover, along with a brand new hotel down there. So a lot of money's going down there, as well as you've got what's happening here at TQL. And so I wouldn't be surprised at all to see an arena come down here. And that's why I think another reason, we've talked a lot about the Roebling Bridge that's going to be starting really soon. They're trying to open up as much real estate. This big, you guys see this big like spaghetti mess of a highway system that's going in here into Fort Washington Way. They're trying to potentially clear this up where they can open up a little bit of acreage down here to use for more development. And so I just find this really interesting. I mean, I live in Northern Kentucky personally, so I can't even vote for these things, but as most people know who live in Northern Kentucky, you're heavily influenced by the politics and the planning that goes on in Cincinnati. And so you're like, come on, like you're rooting for the progress. You're rooting for great things to happen. So I'm going to bring you guys into this interview. And then we'll comment on it a little bit more. Rick says, will we be getting a hockey team? We have a hockey team right now. It's not an NHL team. I don't even know. Cincinnati Cyclones is somebody help me out who's listening here. IHL. I'm sorry, Rick. I don't know anything about, but where those hockey games are right now played is the Heritage Bank Center. So you can go down there, have a good time. And, let's see if I can get those photos up. Watch a hockey game right now. And the arena holds like, I don't know, something like 15, 17,000 people, I would guess, something like that. You got the monster truck rallies. You can do certain things like this down there in the arena. It's, like I said, it's right next to Great American Ballpark. But the hard thing is, and here's what it looks like from the river. The hard thing is bringing in, larger items. So things like March Madness, things like that. Democratic or Republican conventions. We've lost out on bids for these things several times because it's just, there's not a whole lot of space. Alex is saying it's the ECHL. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty nice, but it's not great. We could do better. So it's there. It's great that it's on the river, but it does need an update. So I'm going to bring you in. I've got to stop my screen in order to do audio and then start the screen in just a second. So give me a second here. On this interview here, and where I want to start, I marked these earlier, is around 39:48. So I'm going to let you guys listen to this. If it's driving you crazy at one-time speed, let me know, and I'll go a little faster into it.
Spoke out for the need of a new arena in town.
Yes.
Yes. All right.
To be fair, I did.
So this is Jeff being interviewed by both Sharon Coolidge and Burl. I forget Burl's last name, who's like CEO of the Enquirer.
one disagrees with.
To be fair, I did it 2 years in a row. I did it in 2022 at the annual meeting. I did it again in 23. And the point that I make, and just quite simply, is Visit Cincy, our Convention Visitors Bureau. We market the city's assets to attract tourists in groups to come to Cincinnati. We market our assets. When we have great assets, we have some to sell.
Hey, give me a thumbs up in the comments, guys. Make sure you can hear this audio. I don't want to be just listening to blank nothingness for the next 15 minutes. You guys being like, what are you doing? This is a really bad video.
And when we have poor assets, we lose out to other cities. And we have addressed during my tenure, not through my leadership, but with 3CDC, the city and the county, and the business community, we've addressed the convention center and a headquarters hotel. And those leaders deserve all the credit. Visit Cincinnati's certainly been a part of the equation. So the headquarters hotel and the convention center are going to be assets that we can market, but we still lose out, whether it's for March Madness or for some of the top musical performers or for political conventions. We lose out to our peer cities because our arena was obsolete 20 years ago. I want to say that again. Our arena was obsolete 20 years ago.
It was obsolete when the 2 new Riverfront stadiums were built. And then the talk was about, well, when are we going to?
So sorry, I have to bump it up. I listen to everything on 2x speed. So he's saying, hey, this was obsolete 20 years ago when we built Great American Ballpark. We want these bigger,
former Riverfront Coliseum, Crown, US Bank Arena, and now Heritage Bank Center is what we're talking about. So some would say, including, not to open up a sensitive topic here, but our own Jason Williams has said, do we need this now with all the other priorities that we have, especially since some feel you have to have that marquee tenant. You have to have a year-round team, whether that's a basketball team,
to be able to pay for it.
To make it pencil out. Is that valid?
No, he's wrong. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
So, no, it was his opinion.
That's right.
Jason offers his opinion.
That's right.
Okay.
But I'm just offering, and I say this respectfully, like his opinion, we can have a disagreement. I'm just offering that if you look at arenas around the country, there's over a dozen in cities smaller than ours who don't have major league sports tenants who are profitable. They are profitable. Many of them were built with private dollars, significant private dollars. Is that
what will have to happen here?
Well, I think the first step, and I'm going to be clear, I'm not going to get too ahead, but we have suggested there should be a study.
So this is a big issue, right? Everyone's kind of like, yeah, we need a new arena, but who's going to pay for it? Is it going to be public dollars? Is it going to be private dollars? And they get into this. I don't know if I'll get all, I don't want to waste all your time on here right now, but they talk about this a little bit because especially, the citizens of Hamilton County, basically their taxpayer dollars have paid for both the Cincinnati Bengals Stadium, which is Paul Brown, which is now Paycor, and the Reds ballpark. And so the question is, are they going to pay for arena as well? And so the reporters
in a study can ask the right questions. How much private money, public? Can it be financially profitable? Can it operate successfully without a major league tenant? Where could it even be built? What would the return on investment be? Stay on.
Who's going to pay for it? Where could it be built? What's the return on investment? Yes, like if you're going to do these things, you got to
that one. The return on investment for the tennis tournament that we successfully kept in Cincinnati is about $70 million a year. $70 million a year. Okay, I would tell you that's for 2 weeks. I think we will find out that the return on investment for an arena will be a couple $100 million. These are dollars
in economic impact
that people are, when people come to events from outside the region into the arena, they spend their money. They spend their money in hotels and generate hotel taxes. They eat at our restaurants and they do a little bit of shopping maybe. And they enjoy our parks and whatnot.
And they eat Skyline chili. So, he's right. I wanted to bring on this interview because I'm just appreciative of people who have this mindset. It's like, what are we doing to grow the city? What are we doing to bring in more economic impact into the city? Keeping the Western Southern tennis event was awesome. How do we get this arena here?
Think of the economic impact for Taylor Swift for 2 nights. It was extraordinary. Yep. We're talking about having a place that could have 200, 300 plus events a year.
Yes.
I want to be clear. You don't need what history shows all around the United States. You do not need a major league sports franchise to headline it. When you have a major league franchise, guess what? They take a lot of the money out of the building and put it in their own coffers to pay players.
You have experience with that.
So I love that. Like they were so the argument from the sports writer, Jason Williams, he said like, well, you have to have a headlining tenant. You have to have a major league team in that to make sure the arena pays for itself. And Jeff's saying, no, you don't. Like there's a lot of cities who are not doing that. And his point is when you have a professional sports team, the owners of the arena, they're going to take that money out and pay the players. And then the reporter's like, you know about that? He's like, yeah, because he is the CEO of FC Cincinnati. Like if you want a great team and win, which they just did, they won the Supporters Shield, which is like winning the Major League Soccer like season, right? So congrats to FC Cincinnati. It's amazing. But you don't. He's basically saying you don't need a full-time.
I do, but in this case, you would have an arena that is a true community asset. But I don't want to get out ahead. There needs to be a study.
There needs to be a study, and
that's all. That's all that I have called for is let's get some really smart people who have done this in other cities who can look at the data and advise us what it would take.
And we have reported there's a group, like business group of people willing to pay. Everyone pays a share of the study.
And I guess my question, just your read on the community, and your answer was we need to have a study. But do you think there's an appetite from taxpayers to support another?
So they get into the public versus private money, and you guys can listen to that later. I want to skip ahead because I just want to go to. I thought this was really interesting. Just what he's saying about if we don't do it, what's going to happen? An opportunity cost.
That we can't do all of these things. Every day that we don't do it, another city is passing us by. And when we're not growing, we are dying. And so to allow other cities to ambitiously take on these projects and get them done is consigning Cincinnati to continue to fall down the list of American cities that are growing.
All right, I'm gonna go back and do that again because I just think that is both on a personal standpoint. I believe this. Like if you're not moving forward, you're kind of moving backwards. I'm gonna even go back to one-time speed. We can't do all of these things. Every day that we don't do it, another city is passing us by. And when we're not growing, we are dying. And so to allow other cities to ambitiously take on these projects and get them done is consigning Cincinnati to continue to fall down the list of American cities that are growing. And I'm just offering as a civic leader, I don't accept that. I don't like losing. I don't want to see city falling down the list. And this is something that we need to tackle. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy, and I'm not saying I have the answers. I am saying it's time to tackle it. It's been 20 years. 20 years. It's time to roll up our sleeves and see if we can figure it out. Maybe the answer is no. Maybe the answer is we don't have the appetite for it. And I will accept that. But to suggest we shouldn't even talk about it and have a study, I think that's self-defeating. And I'm going to be more of a cheerleader for this region than a defeatist.
Okay. So
mic drop. So I just find that really interesting, right? That a guy who has the influence of Jeff Berding saying that. I think it's the right mindset for a civic city leader to have, which is like, if we're not doing this, if we're not growing like this, we're getting lapped. We're losing out to other cities. And there's other more competitive cities where those dollars are going to go and those events are going to go and people are going to move to, right? So this stuck out to me today. I wanted to bring to you. I'm going to go forward a little bit.
Going to talk all night. This is what's happening here.
I think that's related.
A lot has been said about, I was hoping that we were going to talk more about the city's, the Cincinnati Southern Railway's decision to sell the railroad and, a lot more about that. But I'm just going to hit you with, we're going to stay on this topic, but bring the railroad into it.
Sure.
So there's going to be a lot of proceeds from the sale of that. But it's very narrowly written. And they're saying that is a good thing, that how it's going to be spent on current city infrastructure projects.
I think that's the state law.
It is, but that was written in, agreement with the board and everybody kind of worked together.
Part of the trust agreement, yes. I think, to be fair, consistent with how the dollars are currently spent under the lease arrangement.
But it's very narrowly tailored.
Okay, so you guys are probably seeing a lot of commercials about this. The vote on the Southern Railway is coming soon. The mayor, all the city council is very for this. The whole idea is they're getting something like, I don't know, $30 million a year from the lease right now from the railway. They want to sell the railway for $1.6 billion. That's the amount that they've agreed on with Norfolk Southern. They want to take all that money and put it in a trust. And the idea is that no mayor, no city council, no one can touch that trust. And the investment funds that spins up spins off out of that trust will basically be double what they're getting for the lease right now. I find it really interesting. They're all for it. But I think it goes along with this idea of progress in the city, but it feels really risky. And I understand that anyone who's like, I don't want to sell an asset because I don't trust any of these people to never touch this money, because that's happened in the past where they've sold the Blue Ash Airport, for example. There are other city assets and that money's poof, gone. And so we'll continue with the interview.
So it kind of cuts out the idea of these big projects like the arena and capping. And we did hear yesterday that someone in the business community, I think it was Gary Lindgren, reached out to really talk about spending on some of these bigger things that the city does need. And the answer was no. Do you feel like it's too narrowly written? And maybe some of that money really should have gone to the big thinking, the big ideas, so Cincinnati doesn't get left behind?
I'll offer this. If I was on city council still, which I'm not, I would have voted yes, because I believe that the dollars, that the principal asset dollars are safeguarded, that the board will have financial advisors, experts to protect the asset, that the city can only spend effectively what the annual dividend, if you will, is, which is expected to be, even by conservative estimates, almost or more than double what the dollars currently are. And we have real needs as a community in our infrastructure. And I think it is a good thing that those dollars are limited to protecting those assets in a way that is consistent with how they're currently spent, in order to not create any controversy. I know that there are some opponents, I want to be fair, that are skeptical of all that. And again, I was in city council. I understand that voters have a level of skepticism. It seems almost too good to be true. And I've told my kids, when something seems too good to be true, be skeptical. It probably is. So to suggest that we can go from leasing the railroad to selling the railroad and getting double on an annual basis to have more money for our aged infrastructure, because we're an older city, without raising taxes, that just seems too good to be true. So if there's people who are suspicious, and I want to be clear, I understand that. I understand that. At the end of the day, though, this isn't one of those where there's something behind the curtain in a way that should make people want to vote no. I understand that people will. But at the end of the day, it really is, to me, I want to be fair, just as simple as we're an older city. We have an aging infrastructure. We don't have the resources. We can go from effectively $30-some million, I think it is, a year, to maybe $60 million a year. The underlying asset must be protected, will be protected. State law limits.
Okay.
Like to me, it's a no-brainer.
But do you think that some of the money should have been spent on bigger projects?
I don't think it needs to be, Sherry, because at the end of the day, the projects will have to stand for themselves.
But do you feel like then, as somebody who has worked in city government, which is where money is moved from, budget to budget, there's just no getting around that. Do you feel like the idea that it's going to free up some $32 million in the actual city budget will be helpful to the big projects? That is something, if we're going to talk about Jason, that is something that he was suggesting.
So let me just say, as you said at the very beginning of this interview, I have my hands full with
you
a lot
do.
of things. I by no means am an expert.
I don't know when you have time to go to games.
I'm not an expert on this. I read the newspaper. I'm being fair. I read the newspaper every day. and I try to be an informed person. At the end of the day, I know enough to vote yes. And I feel as a civic leader that if we want to get big things done, we have to go to the voters and make our case. When I say go to the voters, I don't mean tax increases. I just mean elected officials who answer to the voters. You're going to have to go out there, make the case for big things. Decks over Fort Washington way. Maybe we can get some federal funding for that. Maybe philanthropic dollars. So I think some of the big things, we need more jobs in the city. We need to grow the tax base. You want to help our people? Let's have a more vibrant job base, industrial, manufacturing, not just all, more traditional white collar, if you will. We need to return that to Cincinnati. Well, you could offer that's going to take the Port Authority and Ready Cincinnati and buying land and cleaning it and having the capacity for Ready to then go market for. So guess what? If we're going to have something like that, we're going to have to figure out how to do that. I don't think we need to muddy it up with what's going on right now.
Okay. So he's not a politician anymore. He's starting to sound a little bit like a politician there. But I will say I'm impressed by this. And it stands out to me, the quote that I thought was really, really strong that I was highlighting here is, every day we don't do it, another city's passing us by, and we're not growing. When we're not growing, we're dying. And to allow other hang on a sec. And to allow other cities to ambitiously take on these projects and get them done is consigning Cincinnati to continue to fall down the list of American cities that are growing. As a civic leader, I don't accept that. I don't like losing. This is something we need to tackle. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm not saying I have the answers. It's been 20 years. It's time to roll up our sleeves and see if we can figure it out. So cool. I'm all for that. Figure it out. Go get a study done, and let's see if we can get this arena in town. I got to do one thing real quick, and then I'm going to jump over to some other articles here. Okay, back to here. All right. So I found that really interesting. Now, in terms of the railway, he's like, yeah, I'd vote yes. It sounds too good to be true, but it seems like the protections are good. Now, one thing that's really interesting about where this money can be spent, it says on existing infrastructure, I believe. So I want to point something out here that while I was listening to that interview and reading this article in terms of who are some of the detractors and what are their arguments as to why you shouldn't sell the railway. Because the argument is basically like, you've got an offer for 1.6 billion. You're going to arbitration. If you lease it, more than likely you can take that offer of 1.6 billion and go to arbitration, get a higher lease amount, and then you still control the asset. You still own the asset. So why not do that? Why sell away the asset now? That's a decently strong argument. Now you don't know what's going to happen at the end of that arbitration. You might not get any more, but that's one thing people are saying. So in terms of where that money's going, aging, pockmarked streets, all this infrastructure, that's where it's supposed to be going. There was a place where they couldn't put the city snowplows in. Parks are overrun by honeysuckle and invasive plant species. The city's unfunded maintenance needs are $400 million. So most of where this money is going to come from out of the sale of the railway, if they do that and put it in this trust, is towards the city maintenance, the infrastructure that's going to be said. Now, one thing that's really interesting, I recommend reading this entire article. After Purival, the mayor is saying it's the most important vote and the most important issue in my brief time as mayor, whether that's 4 or 8 years. If it doesn't pass, we're on a steady decline in the city. So again, some, pretty strong rhetoric of like, we got to get this done. Previous councils did a large lump sum and they spent it very quickly without a lot of long-term returns. So that's where some of the people who are skeptical here. This goes on about the railway. There's one thing I wanted to point out from Kevin Flynn. So former councilman Kevin Flynn, a real estate attorney by trade and leading opponent of the deal, is skeptical the city is getting a fair price. He acknowledged the difficulty in pricing rarely for sale railroads, not a lot of comps, but pointing to the city's acquisition of unused track along Wasson Way from Norfolk Southern for $4.3 million a mile. So he did some calculations and basically said, I think we can get more. He may or may not be right. One thing that I thought that was really interesting based on this other interview from Jeff Berding is, if I keep scrolling down here, okay, so here's a quick chart by the numbers. 1.6 billion is the sale. They're projecting 5.5% rate on return, which would give you 88 million. So 56 million of that would go to the city for infrastructure. The other 32, if you get 5.5% return, is to be reinvested it goes to investment fees. So, some people are getting paid here. Estimated at 0.5 percentage points or $8 million in a year. Now, if you happen to have a loss, what I read is if it goes below 25, if you have a huge stock market crash and your trust gets nailed, you're not allowed to spend that money until the principal gets built back up, is how I understand the pension fund. So going down here, I want to show you this right here so what are the guardrails? State law requires the money to be used solely on the rehabilitation, modernization, or replacement of existing infrastructure improvements, which it defines as, quote, streets, bridges, municipal buildings, parks and green space, site improvements, recreation facilities, improvements for parking purposes, and any other public facilities that are owned by a municipal corporation with a useful life of 5 years or more. Existing infrastructure improvements does not include the construction of new infrastructure improvements. So Flynn, who's again the key kind of detractor here, believes that the restrictions are too loose. Others argue that the state law could be changed. So you're saying you could go in there and change the laws, and then you could, get your greedy little paws into that money or use it for things. Is this definition of what is, infrastructure too loose? And so what I found interesting, and sometimes it's fun when you dig into the news, is the shot he kind of takes at Jeff Berding here, because he says somebody with power wants to build a new arena. Okay, so I just showed you guys the other article in the interview with Jeff Berding about wanting to build a new arena. Let's say we buy the existing arena, the Heritage Bank. Now it's, quote unquote, it's existing infrastructure. Flynn said, referring to Visit Cincy's proposal to replace the Heritage Bank Center. So he's saying, there's somebody who wants this new arena. these funds could then go towards purchasing this and the new one. So, he's kind of insinuating. I don't know. I'm not a politician, but I found that a little bit interesting. Overall, I do think that this is going to be passed here. That's my guess, just based on the amount of support behind it. I even saw another article this week that had, even Republicans are debating this. Some Republicans are definitely for it because they're like, yeah, we get more money, we need it for the city. Whether you're Democrat or Republican, like the city has infrastructure needs, and we're behind on that. So that money's got to come from somewhere. But very, very interesting. Pureville said the language, they can't get their hands on it. For example, experienced a population explosion in a certain part of town and needed a new fire station there. Cannot build one with the railway investment insurance. We can't build an arena or a stadium, pledging he would not sign legislation that would spend railroad money on either. So that's interesting. Pureville said the money legally can be spent on decks over Fort Washington Way. So that's another project. Let me go back to the map here. So Fort Washington Way, right down here is the highway, the interstate right here. And the way this was built, sorry, let me get the satellite here. The way this was built with these bridges, like on Race and Vine, what they're looking to potentially do. So if you've ever been down here to a Bengals game or Reds game or the Banks down here, very cool area of the city. But when they're talking about these decks on Fort Washington Way, they're basically talking about building grassy decks over the interstate. So you'd basically have like a park, on these 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't know how many, probably these 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks, I would guess, where you would have like a grassy deck on top of it. And so going back to this article, they're saying the money could potentially be used on that because the Fort Washington Way and the infrastructure they built in the original plans was that they could build decks on that. So because the decks cost exceeds $110 million and the railroad money cannot be borrowed against, it would be unwise to use it for the decks, hurting the city's ability to address its other needs, Pureville said. So it legally can be spent on it, but it would be unwise to do. So Cincinnati voters and many political leaders have rejected the notion of selling or leasing city assets over the years, including Greater Cincinnati's waterworks and the city's parking system. So I won't go into the rest of this, but very interesting. That vote's coming soon. Curious down in the chat what you guys think. Appreciate that, Alex. Great job going both sides. We shall see in November. Yeah, we shall. Very interesting. And I mean, this is democracy, right? This is great. This is what this is why this country is awesome. We get to vote on things like this. Okay, a few other articles. If you guys have any questions, again, real estate related or anything like that, feel free to put them in the chat. Some other news before we bounce out of here tonight. I noticed this as someone who has 5 kids. This perked up my eyes a little bit. But University of Cincinnati expands in-state tuition discount to all of Kentucky and Indiana residents. So very interesting. University of Cincinnati is hoping to build on its unprecedented enrollment growth, is slashing tuition for millions of prospective new students. The university, the region's largest, announced October 18th that students coming in from Kentucky or Indiana will now pay nearly the same tuition as in-state Ohio residents. Previously, UC offered a special tuition. So this already happened, I think, in Northern Kentucky from 8 Kentucky counties and 4 Indiana counties within the greater Cincinnati metropolitan area. But now it's expanding that to include residents of both states in their entireties, or 10.76 million new people. Ohio residents pay $13,176 per year for tuition at UC compared to a baseline tuition of $28,000. The metropolitan tuition rate now available to all Kentucky and Indiana is $13,776. So it's only $600 more a year, which is crazy. It's a savings of $59,000 for a student taking 15 credit hours over 4 semester years. So yeah, I'm not saying all my kids are going to go to UC, but multiply that by 5 and, roughly saving $300,000. If you're someone who has a bunch of kids, or if you're someone out of the greater city, greater Cincinnati metro area, I think it's really smart. I found that really interesting. And just in terms of going with the theme of the night and economic development in the area, beyond infrastructure and shiny new things like arenas and highway decks and convention centers and all that fun stuff, attracting talent is obviously key to any local economy. And so being able to expand this in-state tuition to all of Indiana and Kentucky should only see more and more infrastructure or more and more enrollment to the University of Cincinnati would be my guess. I mean, that's a pretty big news. On top of that, if you're an investor and, you know, if you're an investor and you're thinking around that Clifton area, might make a lot of sense because more than likely with a move like this and the, you know, the investment dollars that have gone, if you haven't been up to Clifton in a while and seen UC, there's a lot of new housing, you know, it's very different than it was 20 years ago. And so, you know, if you're thinking about rental properties, being around a university is never a bad idea. All right, one other article I want to jump over to here is by the U.S. bank leader who said Cincinnati is the most resilient and balanced economy. Maybe not the best photo here for, I mean, a little grainy, little close in, but Mike Prescott is U.S. Bank's Cincinnati-based commercial banking East Region leader. So I wanted to just hit this up before we head out tonight. With turmoil engulfing business plans, greater Cincinnati companies keep rolling along seemingly unscathed. Cincinnati is the most resilient, balanced, even-keeled economy. You know, I say this a lot to people who are moving here, and it's interesting to see a powerful commercial banker basically saying the same thing. But Cincinnati, I've said to people when they move here, you know, if you go back to the recession, and I've said this in terms of where it ranks often, you know, if you bring up many national rankings in terms of the top metros, Cincinnati is usually right in the middle. And when it goes through appreciation or a hot real estate market, we never usually get too hot, and we usually never get too cold either. And because part of that is it's a very balanced, even-keeled economy that Mike Prescott said from U.S. Bank Cincinnati's commercial banking East Region leader and a chief for the bank in the greater Cincinnati market. Prescott should know he handles commercial banking from North Carolina to St. Louis for the nation's 5th largest bank. So this is not just a local banker saying this. He's here, you know, in Cincinnati. However, his territory is from North Carolina to St. Louis. It's the 5th largest bank in the nation. Interest rates have climbed rapidly the past year and a half and have remained high. Inflation soared and is still higher than the Federal Reserve's 2% target. The Fed steadily raised rates to cool off the economy and prevent inflation from running rampant. That can hurt businesses, but those in Cincinnati have held up well, Prescott said. It's remained an amazingly even-keeled good. He loves that even-keeled phrase, right? Gotta love it. And so mergers and acquisitions have slowed significantly. Prescott said interest rates play a big part of that. So businesses are looking to grow on their own, meaning they need more loans. Business lending activity here in Cincinnati, he said, has been busy, super steady. So I just find that really interesting. Again, this may not have anything to do with you in terms of your, you know, whether you're a business owner, you need commercial dollars or anything like that. But this all trickles down, right? You want to, when you bring it back to real estate, you want to live in a place that's steady and steadily and growing, right? You don't want to live. I mean, if you're seeking, let's say you're an investor or just a homeowner and you're seeking to hit appreciation hot and you're willing to risk a little bit more, you might go to those territories or those areas. In the last few years, it's been a lot of the Sunbelt cities where appreciation can go really high, but you have to be really careful on that because when it goes the other way, it can go in a hurry. Cincinnati is not, generally speaking, as long as I've lived here, which has been 35 years, it's a very steady, even-keeled city. As inflation declined in recent months, so did the amount of money businesses borrow. The need for working capital is down, but clients are still purchasing machinery and equipment and expanding into new facilities. U.S. Bank's clients don't expect inflation to return to normal anytime soon. They see it hovering around 3.5% for a while. That's barely below the 3.7 rate the U.S. economy logged in September and well above the Fed target of 2%. No kidding. That means interest rates aren't likely to decline in the near future either. Interest rates aren't likely to decline in the near future either. So if you've been hanging out watching these rates in terms on the mortgage side, and you're like, oh, I'll just wait till they go down. You might be waiting for a while, just throwing that out there. But Cincinnati businesses are adjusting to that new normal. It's been wise to listen to the Fed that rates will stay higher for longer, Prescott said. Our clients buy into higher for longer too. They've had that take for a while, and they hedge against high rates over the last couple of years. Those moves included swapping variable rate loans for fixed rate loans. The labor shortage is still among the biggest issues businesses in greater Cincinnati are facing, Prescott said. I was talking with a local client 2 years ago who said he would like to have 500 more employees if he could find them, Prescott said. Every time I've talked to him since then, including 2 weeks ago, he said it's no better. That's a factor locally now as much as it was then. So going back to what we just said about UC, attracting talent, the jobs are here in Cincinnati. Jobs are here. That's good for real estate. It's good for your home's equity. But we need the people to come. We need them to come. Go Bearcats. Hopefully we'll bounce back next year for sure. But companies are adjusting in part throughout automation. A U.S. Bank CFO Insights survey showed 42% of companies are increasing their levels of automation to make up for employee shortages. So a lot of automation. A lot of those involve collecting cash and making payments in a more efficient way. On the retail banking side, U.S. Bank has closed 5 local branches. All right, I'm going to skip ahead. Our deposits look pretty good. It was unfortunate the malaise that hit the industry this spring, but our phone does tend to ring when those things happen and we pick up new clients. I can tell you we did in Cincinnati. So out of all these, North Carolina and St. Louis, he's saying he's picking up clients here in Cincy, and the economy is the most resilient and balanced one that he's a part of. So that's a good thing. If you live here, it's nice to live in a balanced, resilient economy. I've told this story before, but I will say it again. My family is from Northern Michigan. My dad is one of 3 kids. When he moved away, his sister moved away, his older brother moved away. And I asked my grandpa before he passed away, when I asked him, hey, and it's kind of a small, farm town-ish area. When some of the manufacturing left, there just weren't any jobs. So I asked him, Grandpa, was it really hard when your kids moved away? Because my whole life I lived at least 5 hours away from my grandparents. When we moved down to Cincy, it was more like 6.5, 7 hours away. And he said, well, I don't blame them. There weren't jobs here to keep them here. So they had to go. And that's the story. You see that in small town America, all over the place, right? People moving to bigger cities for jobs. And when that happened, that was very interesting. I kind of took that to heart. And in recent years, my oldest brother, he's a pilot. So my family actually moved down here to Cincinnati with Delta when Cincinnati had a hub with Delta. And funny enough, and ironically enough, my oldest brother got a pilot's job with Delta and moved back to Michigan from Cincinnati and flies out of Detroit now. And he's about 2 hours away from our family's farm, which is still in the family. And he was interested in saying, hey, what if we all move back to the farm and live up there? And my middle brother and I kind of looked at each other. We're like, we love it there. That would be awesome. But that's a big commitment. What does that mean for our kids? Because are we going to relive the same cycle that my grandpa experienced, which was, your kids, all the kids move away unless you become a farmer, or have another, create another business that works around that industry. So it could be done. But my middle brother and I kind of look at each other and we're like, Cincinnati is, as our good friend Mr. Prescott said over here, is resilient and a balanced economy. And a big dream of mine is to be around my kids as they grow up, and to be around my grandkids as they grow up. And so when I think of Cincinnati, and I tell this to a lot of people I talk to who are looking to move here, I'm like, this is a place that's great for families. And a large part of that is because the economy is balanced. And, there are obviously some larger companies that if they were to leave, P&G, Fifth Third Bank, U.S. Bank, Western and Southern, Kroger, there's some large Fortune 500 companies here. But that's not the only, the industry is pretty balanced throughout, right? There's some manufacturing, there's technology, there's distribution, there's marketing companies galore. So it's not like a Detroit, what I watched in Detroit as someone who grew up in Michigan was like, it was so built around the automotive industry that when the automotive left, Detroit just kind of bottomed out. And so if you have a goal and a plan, which I do, or a dream to be around your kids, to be around your grandkids, or just live in a steady city that's like not crazy, Cincinnati is great for that. It's steady, even keeled, going to usually have steady, slow growth. But, as we looked at tonight, some of the things are pretty exciting that will, be for that growth in the future. New arena, the potential sale of the railway. How do we look forward to the future? What I've been seeing from the leaders right now recently, even amidst, former city council members being sentenced to jail time, it makes sense why voters would be skeptical, right? Of politicians. We live in the world of social media. Everyone's angry all the time. And we've been able to look behind the curtain a little bit more, and power leads to corruption, right? That it just happens. It's kind of part of it. But I am encouraged when I see people, and maybe all of their motives aren't super pure, but when they're looking forward in the city, and they're looking to bring good things to the city, that I'm excited about that. So new arena, new convention center, new bridge, new decks on it, Fort Washington Way, opening enrollment to in-state tuition to people in all through Kentucky and Indiana to attract more talent to the region. I am for it because that, in the long run, it's going to be a better city for my kids to live in, and it's going to give them, don't tell them, but it's going to give them a better chance to give them those jobs if they don't want to take over this business, to stick around so that I can be an old man watching my grandkids run around my yard while my knees hurt. So that's what I'm thinking about. All right, that's going to wrap it up for tonight, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, please give it a thumbs up. So glad you joined in. Let me know in the comments, I guess, if you like this, if this, I geek out a little bit over economic news in particular, but it's all related to the real estate, what's going on here, what's happening with your home price, whether it's going up or down, the equity you're going to gain. And it's all obviously very interwoven. So guys, hope you enjoyed your Sunday night. Have a great week, and we'll try to catch you next week. Thanks for watching. Who Day next week, 49ers. Go Bengals. All right. See you guys.